We are live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg, and it's that time of the evening where we interact with you on issues that matter to you, matter to your community, matter to your family. Tonight, we are talking about the death of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II and her legacy. What does it mean for me and you? Why are we talking about this? Because it's topical. A very good evening to you, South African, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman. This is It's Topical. Let's welcome a central voice on tonight's program, our digital audience. It's good to have them on the program tonight. They are sourced based on their interactions with us during the week on our topic of the week. And as always, digital audience, if you have a comment, if you have a question, burning question, raise your virtual hand. I'll do my best to get to you, but just remind you, we have limited time, so we might not get to everybody. But as I said, I'll do my very, very, very best to bring you into the conversation. The Queen is dead. Long live the King. Traditional public proclamations being done. King Charles III takes over a 7-decade reign that has been dotted with pomp and ceremony, tragedies and, well, occasional scandals. Many have lauded Queen Elizabeth II for being resilient in the face of adversity. Do you agree? I guess it's a complicated history, painful for some, which means there's a complexity regarding the legacy of Britain's longest-serving monarch, especially outside of the United Kingdom, which leads us to our question of the week. And we're asking you, as an African, what does Britain's Queen Elizabeth II's 70-year reign mean to you? Walk with us while we get ready for the roundup. What place does monarchy have in modern democracy? If we fast forward to look at King Charles III's tenure, what's your expectations? Let us know at It's Topical SABC. Now, time for your roundup. Well, traditional leaders and diverse ethnic groups and nationalities converged in Ntabankulu in the Eastern Cape for a cultural and heritage festival. The festival seeks to showcase cultural diversity and unity among ethnic groups in the country. The Amampondo Cultural and Heritage Festival is held annually, and song and dance was the order of the day. It's a beautiful cultural scene. Traditional leaders, academics, politicians, and locals came together to showcase the uniqueness of their culture and heritage. The new chief of the Barolongbu Seleka, Kgomoeswana, believes that her coronation, coinciding with the death of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, is an important part of history. Kgosi Moroka took up the chieftaincy this week after the lengthy contest over her leadership. A group of disgruntled residents opposed her chieftaincy on the basis that she is a woman and questioned her lineage. Let's hear from Chief Moroka what she had to say.
It is the historic moment that the events that led to this day, with the bowing out of Queen Elizabeth on my birthday and Prince Charles sharing the day with me today, also being coronated. I think these are divine occurrences and it's a blessing.
All right, one of the top stories of the day. Many residents have lost their homes in Jagersfontein in the Free State after a mine dam burst earlier today. Houses, cars and animals have been washed away by the mud. Some residents are being evacuated from their homes, while others have already moved to higher lying areas for safety. Charlesville, in the worst affected area, that's what we're told. Search and rescue efforts are underway to locate 4 people who were unaccounted for. SABC News reporter Makhala Masiteng and video journalist Semi Maseme spoke to some of the residents.
My neighbors woke me. Then I thought there was somebody, a burglar, or there was a fight. So I tried to go and see what's happened. They said, no, get out of the house. We are flooding, you know. Then I ran out and we went to look outside where the water is coming from. Then the water reached us. Then I had to come back again just to check for the ID book. I've got the business down here. I've got nothing inside. Everything is under this. I don't know what to call it, this mat or whatever it is. The house is now open. There's nothing left. I'm the way I am. So I can't talk any further.
Okay.
Thank you.
This morning I received a phone call from my friend, and she said, your grandfather, the mates run in the houses, and then I stay in town. I have to run with my feet from town to the location. So when I came here, I was looking for the lady who stayed with my grandfather, and then we came together and she said they can't find him. So if we can find the body now, I have to make peace that he is already no more.
So far, this is our only 2 live animals we found on the premise at the damage site. We're still walking through. It's only me and my colleague who were able to get inside the ramp area, disaster area.
The rest of our colleagues aren't able to enter through, so we're unable to get through with our vehicles. So at this stage, we're just trying to carry everything to our trailers, and then we will take them to a place of safety.
All right, I want to get the very latest from this story. Let's bring in SABC News reporter Makhala Masiteng. She's live for us in Kgomoeswana in the Free State, where this mine dam burst, causing massive flooding in parts of the town. Makhala, good to have you on the program. We've heard from the Premier's spokesperson earlier, Palesa Chubisi, saying that the Premier had a telephonic conversation with the President and that the President requested a report to determine how best the national government can intervene. Do we know if that assessment has been done, and if so, what's the latest?
Even Blaine and the viewers, yes, they did indicate that the assessment is still continuing. Obviously, it will not be an overnight thing, and mostly today the focus was on rescuing and searching for the missing family members. But obviously they will still continue because they still even have to assess the extent of the damage that has been caused by this. As you have indicated earlier on, many houses have just collapsed. We moved to Tellsville, which is the area that is near the mine, and we just saw houses that are gone. The only thing that we could see is the foundations of the houses that are left there. We even got the opportunity to speak to some of the family members or some of the family that are affected by this. They were just standing in an open area saying that this was our home and nothing is left. So they'll still have to go deeper into assessing the extent of the damage that has been caused by this burst.
I saw the emotion on the face of the person that you interviewed. The damage cuts deep. Those who have been evacuated, Makhala, where are they being housed tonight?
We understand that those who have been rescued have been taken to the nearer town, Forest Smith, at the community hall, and others have been taken into town in Fontaine in a school hall. Some of them are housed there, and obviously, as we have indicated throughout the day, that some have been taken to various hospitals just to be checked for medical attention. Some will sleep there, and others have been released, obviously.
Assessing affected areas must be such a difficult task given the situation. How are rescue workers, disaster management teams, how are they coping?
Well, they were still continuing with the work. They did indicate that they will have different teams in different areas, in different locations rather, to ensure that they cover all the areas, but they will have teams that will relieve them from time to time as they continue searching and even rescuing. As you have indicated, up to so far, the latest information that we've gotten from the authorities is that 4 people are still missing. They're still searching for them. We earlier even got the opportunity to speak to some of the people who were still searching for their grandfather. They tried to call him, but obviously they couldn't reach him, and they said that the only thing that they could see in the morning after the incident, they could see only the bed flowing. So they are still searching even now. They haven't gotten any information as to what is happening or whether their loved one is alive.
Yeah, listen, if there are any major developments with regards to the rescue efforts, come back to us. You've got our numbers. We'll get you on air immediately, get the view at the very latest. SABC News reporter Makhala Masiteng, live for us there in Jagerfontein in the Free State, talking to us about that tragedy that happened earlier this morning. All right, I want to get to our top story. I want to give you the TikTok of what we can expect over the next 2 weeks. And it's been called the Queen's final journey. So today, we saw the Queen's coffin taken by road to the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh, in Scotland. And interesting, it's something that's struck me. At the same time, what seemed like a contradiction of emotions, Charles III was being publicly proclaimed as king. And this took place in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland. An interesting pendulum swing, if you will, from the start of a new era to the end of an historic one. Have a look at what we can expect in terms of the week. So tomorrow, you will see a procession to St. Giles's Cathedral in Scotland. It's where the general public may get a chance to file past the Queen's coffin in a mini lying-in state, if you will. So after leaving England and visiting Scotland, we understand that King Charles III will travel to other parts of the UK. What happens on Tuesday? Well, the coffin is expected to be flown to London at the rest at Buckingham Palace in London. Then, I want to fast forward to Thursday, the 15th of September, to Sunday, the 18th. The lying-in state continues. We understand a rehearsal is likely to take place for the state funeral procession, although, they have been planning for this for a long time, probably just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So we are expecting many heads of state for the funeral, and they will start arriving later next week. And then finally, they will arrive for the Queen's state funeral, expected to take place at the Westminster Abbey in central London. A final resting place will be at the King George VI Memorial Chapel, an annex to the main chapel where her mother and father were buried, along with the ashes of her sister, Princess Margaret. Prince Philip's coffin will move from the royal vault to the memorial chapel to join the Queen's remains. Busy week lying ahead. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what we can expect. King Charles III has now been formally proclaimed as the United Kingdom's new king. And since, just have a look at this one here. That's him being formally proclaimed as king, saying that he is deeply aware of this great inheritance and the duties and heavy responsibilities of being sovereign, and adding that he will seek the peace and harmony as well as prosperity of the Commonwealth realms and territories around the world. On the SABC News channel, a lot of you had much to say regarding the new British king, and here's an example of what you had to say. Take a look.
It's very difficult for me because I think really there were stories that she's dead long ago, so that was only her double. But yeah, I'm sorry for them, but they've got good things and also bad things, so yeah, but it's their country and they must live with it.
A great person, wonderful figurehead for the UK and that, but she's gone now, and there's a bit of emptiness and a bit of sadness for everybody, I think. Even though we may not be British and we may not be from that country.
All right, another of the SABC News YouTube pages that gained traction is this one focusing on your comments, and that's what you just heard. I want to take you to more of your comments, and this is a feature that's been pretty popular on this program. It's called the Word on the Street feature. It's with regards to the reaction of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II's passing. And we went to Rosebank, the streets of Rosebank in Johannesburg, to talk about the legacy. This is what you had to say.
She was really a role model to every woman, showing what a powerful woman can be in society, and to deal with the things she had in such a good and sophisticated manner is something we can all look up to.
Her legacy was just poison, and as an African, I truly don't care, because that poison has affected so many countries, our whole continent.
The diamonds that she has, because I feel like she's old enough to know that things were done wrongly. So I mean, let them eat cake. Like, they're happy that she's gone.
Kori kaba kwathe ba mugisele sithu zwavhuḓi zwi vha tshimbilele ndi tshifhinga tsho swika.
All right, I want to discuss this further, especially with regards to legacy issues. Follow me. Let's bring in the better minds as well as our digital audience to help us unpack the issues. We are joined as guest by Professor Ruth Teer Tomaselli, Emeritus Professor and Research Fellow at UKZN, as well as Victor Kgomoeswana, commentator and author, University of Limpopo. I understand Victor is joining us from Lagos in Nigeria. They will pop up on your screens in a little while. Let's get straight to our digital audience first of all and speak to Zephora. And you're coming to us, Zephora, from North London. How's it been in terms of this past couple of days, given the death of the longest reigning British monarch? If you can unmute, Zephora. I think, Zephora, if our studio can tell Zephora to unmute, I'll come back to you in a short while. Let's go to Uganda. It just says Uganda there. Thank you. If you can unmute and talk to us about reaction in Uganda. I know Uganda was under British rule from the late 1800s, early 1900s. Gained independence in the 1960s, 62 if I'm not mistaken. Given that history, what sort of reaction is there on the streets of Uganda at the moment, given the death of the Queen? I'm not sure. I think we're having a few issues. Digital audience, if you can hear me, raise your hand and I'll come straight to you. Digital audience, you can hear me? All right. Atta, let's go to you, Atta. I understand, Atta, you are, if you can unmute, you in London, correct? Please unmute, Atta. Unmute your microphone there. All right, I think we're having a bit of some technical issues. Let's see if we can go to Felix. Felix, Kenyan in London. Talk to us about reactions where you are, Felix.
I hope you're hearing me.
I am hearing you loud and clear. Good to have you in the program.
There is a miscommunication. I'm from Kenya, and I stay in Kenya. So,
okay.
A word on the street. You see, British we colonized Kenya for about since 1885. They're about up to 1963 when we got independent.
Yeah.
A lot of many things happened, both bad and good things. Actually, everything is just okay because we believe the good things that happened actually shaped the country, and actually up to now we still have a good tie with the British, and we still remain in Commonwealth. Yeah.
And something that, look, Kenya remained as a British colony, if correct me if I'm wrong, until 1963. And something that jumps out is the Mau Mau uprising. It's still regarded, it's said to be one of the worst atrocities under British rule back then. And that, I understand, was the first year that Queen Elizabeth II took the throne. Talk to us about, given that history, talk to us about that history and how it's reflective in this day and age when the Queen dies.
Actually, there is a lot of so many atrocities that happened during that time, and up to date, most of the things have never been resolved. Actually, the British government paid about $19 million to the affected families.
Yeah,
and so many things have never been unraveled, but. Like in the Mau Mau fight, we lost somebody like Dedan Kimathi. Up to today, his body has never been found. And I think there is a lot of word on the street. So many people have never forgiven the British, and more so, you see, when Queen Elizabeth was ascended to the throne, she was actually in Kenya. When on her way from South Africa, she came to Kenya, and the father died. That is when she ascended to the throne.
Yeah.
So we believe, and most of Kenyans believed she would have done much, but nothing has been done actually to settle the issue of the killings and what happened for the Mau Mau fighters.
Yeah, yeah. Let's bring in Kgoshi Letsiri Phahla from the Phahla royal family. So good to have you on the program. Talk to us about your reaction when you first heard that Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, has passed on. Mixed feelings?
Good evening, Blaine. Let me respond to your statement in two ways. One, Queen Elizabeth reigned and looked at some of the issues that was happening to make sure that the royalty was kept in place. I think she has done good work in that area where she commanded respect from the British people. But on the other hand, we as South Africans are still feeling the pinch in terms of the colonial legacy that the British left on South Africa. We're still having British companies that are still mining and exploiting our areas in terms of mineral resources, and nothing is happening. So whatever the South Africans are responding to her death, it has a bitter taste of what is happening now, because it looks like the legacy is still continuing in terms of exploiting mineral resources that the South Africans have, which do not benefit anyone except the British companies, because all the areas that have been mined by these British companies are still poorer than they were before, and there is nothing that is indicating any change towards the livelihoods of those people that are living in those areas. So it's a mixed feeling. Her country has got a bad legacy that it has left throughout the entire African continent, and including us as South Africans as well. But anyway, it is royalty that we are, and it indicates that royalty and democracy can exist in the same space, even in this modern day era of civilization. So she sustained that, and that indicates to us that she was doing something good for the people, and we are very much grateful towards that.
Dr. Rachitanga, do you share Kgosi Phahla's sentiments, given that it's a complicated issue when you're talking about monarchy in the modern era? Your thoughts, sir? If you can unmute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and thank you. Yes, I do share the same sentiment with him. But my approach will be to reflect on the sustainable development goals. If we are to measure him, looking at say for example, eradicating extreme poverty in Africa, what did she do? So those are the sentiments that maybe I can provide to say that Indeed, what Chief Patla is saying is true, and one way to measure that is to check in terms of ensuring that there is improved health in Africa. What did they do, and what are they doing? And then on the line of royalty, my interest when reflecting on the death was more especially on the succession, where you find that the queen has passed on today, and then just within 2 days there is a king. Of which for me is something that I've noted, and then with great interest to say that maybe it's something that we can benchmark and see if ever it's doable on the side of or on here in Africa. But the point that I want to drive home is that yes, there are a lot of things to appreciate again on the side of royalty, more especially because they are able to contain that and also to work hand in hand with the democracy government. Thank you very much.
It's so interesting. While at the same time, the country in the UK, the people of the UK are mourning the death of their queen. At the same time, they are bringing to the fore the next king. Important to understand that succession. Tatana Risimati Mkari, let me bring you into this from the Mkari royal family. You heard the sentiments there. Do you share it, especially with regards to how the succession works in the UK? If you can unmute, sir. There we go. Let's try it now. All right, I think we're having a bit of an issue there. We'll come back to you in a short while. One more try. All right, we're having a bit of an issue. Humphrey, I'm going to come back to you. Humphrey Lumumba is in Uganda. Stand by. Let's bring in our guests, Victor, as well as Professor Ruth Teer Tomaselli. Prof, to you first. You heard the sentiment. It's a complex history, as I explained. But with regards to the legacy, the atrocities of the past stemming from colonialism, and the individual that was the queen, can you separate the two? Prof, if you can unmute. There you go.
Blaine, thank you very much. Yes, I think that, as you say, it's very complicated because the Queen is a person. She's a real live person, and as people have been telling us over and over again these last few days, she's a mother. She was a wife. She's a person in her own right. But what's most important in terms of her death and of the kind of constitutional point of it is that she is a figurehead that stands for the Commonwealth, that stands for the government of the United Kingdom and the realms and all the realms of the Commonwealth. So it's she is the ultimate kind of figurehead. We talk about the crown as if this one particular piece of jewelry actually stands for an entire system of government. And in that way, it's true, too, that she does stand for a system of government. And the government is partly of what she inherited and also partly what she shaped. And don't forget that as a constitutional monarch, she had very limited powers in terms of law, in terms of making law, in terms of being able to actually change anything. And that, in fact, is her great strength. And, if you give me a chance a little bit, I'll talk about that in a minute. But let me to talk about the sort of the colonial question, which is the question that we all as Africans really need to come to terms with. And I think what is important is that we don't shy away from it, is that, the British Empire, as it was at one stage, if you look at maps, the pink of the British Empire covered more than a third of the world and vast numbers of the inhabitants of the world. So it's certainly something that we have to come to terms with. But if we look at the period in the 70 years of her reign, what is really interesting for me is the way in which that empire has dissolved. And in fact, what has come about now is a Commonwealth, a group of nations who work together in harmony. And for me, it's really notable to know that there are more members of the Commonwealth than there were ever members of the British Empire.
Yeah.
So countries that were never part of the British Empire have chosen to become members of the Commonwealth, like Gabon or like Mozambique.
But there are countries that are raising concerns, with regards to talking about maybe removing the Queen as the head of state. We have Australia, Jamaica, Belize. I think Barbados has already done it last year. So are you seeing the reach of Britain diminish?
But when they leave let's just see. What you're saying is that they leave the realm of the British royalty, but they still become part of the Commonwealth. So yes, absolutely. And there's always been Republican fervor in many countries from us. I mean, take South Africa. South Africa has had a Republican fervor since it was annexed, since the Transvaal was annexed. There has been Republican fervor to try and decolonialize it from that very early point. And of course, it's been much more complicated than that because there's been so much internal kind of disagreement about that.
Right.
And in Ireland is a very good and very informative example of divided opinion.
Yes.
And that divided opinion resulted in a divided country. So if even if you go to part of Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, the kingdoms being England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales, if you go to Northern Ireland, the feelings there are very divided. The loyalists are very loyal and the Republicans don't want to know. So, and that's nothing new. In Derry, where I was in a couple of years ago, just before the lockdown, what do you do with the dead queen? Well, that queen was Victoria. You blow up her statue. And in Guildhall in Derry, there's still a partly dismembered statue of Queen Victoria. And they've left it like that. When I say they, I mean the custodians and the curators of the museum have left it like that because it is part of the ongoing history of rebellion and of disagreement.
Reflective of the sentiment at the time. Victor, let me bring you in. An end of the Elizabethan era. And I remember you were quoted in the newspaper recently saying that the death of the Queen should be seen as an opportunity to undo damage the British Empire did through its rebranding of colonialism, or colonization rather. Rebranding of colonization, what do you mean, Victor?
Okay, good evening, Blair. I wouldn't be going to the, I think what I said was King Charles III has an opportunity to bring his, if you like, every monarch will bring their personality to it. And Prof. Tomaselli is right. It's a constitutional monarchy, which means, it's one of those where you have a zebra. You can't really separate who's running the show because certain prerogatives are with the monarchy, but it's run by the government, but the head of the monarch is still the head of the British Armed Forces, but then the powers are delegated to the Prime Minister, who delegates to the Secretary of State. So what I saw as an opportunity was, after 70 years at the helm, King Charles has learned enough about the New World Order. He understands that the West and the East are having to collaborate more because the Cold War has ended. And we are having the rise of Africa, the rise of China, the rise of Brazil, India, and all the BRICS countries. And there's no way he's going to play the same old colonial master that the British Empire, if you like, played in the days of Queen Elizabeth and before, all the kings up to Queen Victoria. I mean, I'm talking to you from Victoria Island in Lagos, Nigeria.
Right.
It just gives you an idea of how enduring the legacy of the British Empire is, and you can't just separate the two. But I believe King Charles has a different persona that he can bring to this. He has worked with the charities. He has already showed that he has a sensibility of working for climate change or countering climate change. So that's what I meant by rebranding. Continue to lead and be the figurehead, but bring your style and swing into the game.
Well, you mentioned something very important there, figurehead. King Charles III, is the head of state, largely in name only, right? Talk to us about what sort of influence can he have on the British government's policies that can possibly benefit former colonies?
As an African, Blair, I can tell you this. I want reparation. I don't buy the story that we are just move on. The British Commonwealth, even the realms that are there, are owed something a lot more than just the goodwill of King Charles III. I am sure that there's damage that's still visible in the former colonies of Britain, and I don't think we can just say, let's move on. Yeah. If King Charles, in his days leading up to the ascent to power, was willing to work against climate change, he can just come to Nigeria and see what some of the British multinationals have done, the damage they have caused to countries like Nigeria. So I would say one of the biggest contributions could be that he could start talking about reparation. It's not good enough to just say, let's move on. And if he can take the adulations and the admiration that come with being the king of the British people, he should then be saying, I can take responsibility for moving towards reparation.
Right. Stand by, lady and gentlemen, our digital audience as well. We're going to come back to you. I didn't forget about Humphrey as well. Risimati Mkari, we're going to come to you in a short while. We need to take a quick break. Send us your thoughts at It's Topical SABC. You can also give us a call 011-714-5958. Quick break, more next. We are talking about the death of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II and her legacy. What should it mean to me? What should it mean to you as an African? Send us your thoughts at It's Topical SABC. But we also went out on the streets to get your views, canvass your views with regards to the question we ask you. So let's go now and listen to your thoughts from the streets of Rosebank in Johannesburg.
It's quite sad. She was a perfect example to, young ladies and how a woman or a lady should act. And hopefully her legacy lives on through her grandchildren and her children.
The news comes as devastating to the world over. She will be missed by all who knew her. Death is inevitable. We're all facing death. She's lived a prosperous and full life. It's her time to rest.
But yeah, I understand people mourning her. She is one of probably the oldest reigning queens. And I think her legacy will always live on. But I just don't feel that it affects us as South Africa.
Look, opinion continues to be divided following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Let's take a look at what you had to say during your sending in of your comments via WhatsApp. This is what you had to say.
British monarch as a whole will always bring pain to our hearts because it is based on African slavery. The whole British monarch is based on African slavery. They benefit from our pain.
Everything on earth has its own time. Time for birth and death. May her soul rest in peace.
I understand the grief of those who are mourning the Queen. But as an African, I want to question what the Queen has done to advance the interests of the black people, other than exploiting our resources, exploiting our forefathers, our ancestors, to build a monarchy. She used our resources. She used our forefathers, our ancestors, to build a monarchy. I would appreciate if she had used her position as the queen to bring back the head of Chief Makoni, the head of Mbuyane Anda. Those people, they deserve a decent funeral like the one she's having.
All right, we do appreciate your comments. Please continue to send us your comments, your thoughts. It's going to be a long 2 weeks. Remember, the coronation only happens, maybe some are saying, maybe 6 months later. We will find out as the weeks progress. Let's take it back to our digital audience and speak to Tatana Risimati Mkari. So you've heard the comments made by our guests with regards to the divided opinion as well regarding the legacy of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II. Your thoughts on her passing as well as the future of the royal family?
Blaine and the listeners as well as my colleagues, good evening. I want to take a different view with respect to a number of comments which were raised by different experts as well as the listeners at home. My view is that in the hearts and the minds of indigenous Africans, the life and death of Queen Elizabeth represent the injustices which was inflicted mostly to African people who opened their arms to welcome the visitors, and if you like, the invaders around 300 AD. And in that process, my understanding is that Queen Elizabeth inherited and embraced imperialism as well as a colonial government system, which is engineered to dehumanize and to deprive Africans. You will recall that around the 15th and the 19th century, more than 12,500 Africans were shackled and placed in ships and moved through what is known as the Atlantic slave trade. And those who survived the journey were condemned and subjected to work in the plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas for the benefit of Queen Elizabeth's family and other European countries. Her accession to the throne on 6 February 1952, to me, perpetuated and sustained the system of brutality for another 70 years, which marked 1,000 years in totality for a brutal colonial system against Africa. In a nutshell, her death marks an end to the brutal system of colonialism, imperialism, the Western culture which has and continues to destroy the rich customs, cultural practices of the African indigenous people, as well as our indigenous knowledge systems.
I'm going to try.
You will also appreciate the fact that out of 12,500,000 people who were enslaved by that system, only 10,700,000 people made it to the Caribbean and the Americas. That, to me, is serious atrocities which were committed against Africans. I therefore want to concur with the last speaker that it will be wrong for us to just say, it's okay, let's forget about it, let's move on. I will be happy, Herman and the listeners, if Britain and other colonial powers could come to Africa and pay reparation for what they've done over the period of 350 years of colonial rule.
Thank you, sir. Let's bring in straight away Professor Teer Tomaselli. You've heard what was said with regards to this plea for reparations. The painful history that we're talking about now. What has Queen Elizabeth II done to right the wrongs of the past before she assumed the throne, or atone in any way? What's your thoughts? If you can unmute, ma'am. There you go.
I don't really know how, in her personal capacity or even in her constitutional capacity, she could have done that. I think that is really a matter for the British government to address. Obviously, what the point that was made, and I think it's very valid point, is that the monarchy has an amazing amount of soft power, of diplomatic power. And so what happens behind the scenes is not what we actually necessarily privy to. So I think that one of the ways that the atonement can happen is through much better trade relations, much more accommodating kind of development schemes that would be less kind of top-down, more partnerships like it was mentioned in the BRICS kind of partnerships, where you're talking about equal to equal rather than donor to recipient, which has been sort of the development system that has happened until now. And of course, in the area of climate change and in the area of respect, respect for people, respect for nations, respect for the climate, respect for our world. And I think that there is a measure of that. And I think that certainly in her personal capacity, she was extraordinarily gracious and very, very accommodating in ways that the most of the British public are not. So that if you know, her ability to be able to empathize with the great and the good and with the ordinary people across nations, across different continents, has been remarkable. And I think that really the question now becomes is, what can happen to the monarchy in the present time that would make it more able to move forward into the 21st century, into a situation where global power has been so centralized in Europe, in America, in Russia and China, and where the rest of the world has been even more marginalized. And when we talk about the colonial period as if it was something that has come and gone, and it isn't. It is
multi-generational effects, consequences.
It's very much rebranded. It is. We have different kinds of oppression. We have different kinds of inequalities, which are in many ways equal, if not worse, to what we have experienced so far.
Victor, let me bring you in terms of what Professor Teer Tomaselli had to say. I understand that is a practical way of maybe atoning in terms of trade relations. But as we were saying, talk to us about the influence that King Charles will have over a Liz Truss government in terms of that, the Commonwealth under a tenure of King Charles III. It's a movement of friendship and it's a movement of unity. But do you see it thriving or crumbling under King Charles?
No, there's no way it's going to crumble. Again, let me just give you an indication. Shell is a British multinational. It's a 260 billion kind of revenue company. I'm in Nigeria now, where agriculture was destroyed by the discovery of oil about 70 years ago, and Shell has been a major player in that business. So when I talk reparation, I'm not talking about something imaginary. I'm talking about something that can be quantified. And I don't even want to go back and start being punitive for the methods that were used in how land was. I mean, read the book by Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, The Land is Out. You will understand how the monarchy stood by and sometimes actively went about dispossessing Africans of their land. So the reparations I'm talking about are about things that are still quantifiable and the impact of which is still visible today. So I say Prince Charles then and now King Charles had a very good reputation for fighting for the preservation of the climate and the saving of the planet, as the green people would say. I am saying I want him to go into some of the countries where British multinationals have done business, whether it's South Africa with the diamond trade, the big hole in Kimberley, what is being done for the people of the Northern Cape. In Zimbabwe, where you know exactly the deprivation, the damage that was done, the failure to honor the Lancaster Agreement. Lancaster House Agreement. You go to Ghana, you go to, even as I said, Nigeria, every country where the Brits have been, there's in their wake, they have left a lot of damage. And again, yes, I'm happy to let that go as long as King Charles III can say, I'm going to move on. I mean, you know, we can get very sentimental. Look at the crown that the Queen was wearing. Look at the British Museum of Natural History and find out the stuff that's in there belongs to Africa, Blair. And I don't think you can talk about, oh, the honor of the monarchy and the glory and the royalty. Those are things that can be glorified. And for the person that Queen Elizabeth was, I say condolences to the British people because she's a human being, as a fellow human. I'm full of condolences. But for the symbols that she stood for and the damage that has been done, I'm saying King Charles III can do a lot more quantifiable reparation.
Let's take it to a country that was ruled by Britain in the late 1800s and early 1900s until they gained independence in 1962. Uganda. Humphrey, you from there. With regards to that history we're talking about, currently talk to us about sentiment on the ground and how's the Queen's death and the King's ascension being seen in the streets, on the streets of Uganda.
Thank you for having me here. My pleasure to be here. Uganda, yes, was ruled by the British from around the 1800s till we got independence in 1962. I would say in comparison to other countries like Kenya and maybe South Africa, Uganda didn't got maybe the better half of it. The British weren't too rough in their administration, in their system. We don't have a very bad history of killing the local people. The British did do a bit of good work here. They did build some cities. They did build one of the biggest dams here in East Africa that provides electricity up to today to neighboring countries like Rwanda, Kenya, even Tanzania. So I would say in terms of sentiment in the environment, I would say it's rather good. It's rather good compared to other nations.
All right.
But one thing I would like to add on is that the British monarchy, under the rule of Queen Elizabeth and those before her, took deliberate steps to undermine African people in how they built their states up to today.
Right.
You find like a country like Uganda, which has 45 tribes and 54 ethnic groups. You find that the British monarch went on to favor like a certain group, like Tribe X, over others, in terms of money, in terms of incentives, in terms of taxes, and up to today, we find that those very people are the ones in charge of government, in charge of government resources. So this deliberation which was taken the British to undermine us from the very beginning goes on up to today. Goes on up to today. But in conclusion, what I would like to say is that as people shouldn't judge Queen Elizabeth too harshly in our words. But after World War II, Britain was beaten very badly in the war. That's after World War II. They lost to Germany and Hitler.
We'll have to leave it there, Humphrey. We've got like 3 minutes. We've got like 3 minutes left. But thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. We've got your points. Silindiwe Dube, you're a South African now living in the United Kingdom. You heard what Humphrey had to say with regards to the complex relationship that countries in Africa have with, well, the people in the countries of Africa have with the royal family. What's your thoughts living there?
Oh, hi everyone. To me, the Queen's legacy is the same as the apartheid's legacy in South Africa. Her legacy is the same as the legacy of the late apartheid President F.W. de Klerk. I also accept that my view might be different from someone else. When the Queen came into power in 1952, the British Empire had over 70 colonies. So that will always be part of her legacy. We cannot shy away from that. Many people died, were tortured, and they were imprisoned. I also sympathize with her family and British.
Okay.
As she served more than 70 years diligently as a queen. However, I cannot shy away from the history.
Right. Unfortunately, I have to leave it there, Ms. Dube. I just want to bring in one more, if I can get it. Zafora, I know we started with you, but we lost your connection. If you could just unmute, you've got 30 seconds. Your thoughts with regards to the legacy of Queen Elizabeth. Oops, I think, there we go.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'll just talk about what is happening even now in South Africa. People are suffering, they have no places to live, they're living in the shacks, they're starving, they don't have jobs, nothing is better. During when Mandela was here in Britain, after when we got our independence, he was with the Queen. Yeah. He promised that he's taking the country to the Commonwealth, which he did. But I can't say I didn't understand why the Commonwealth is there. The Queen is not doing anything for the country. Nothing is done. Yeah. People are just suffering the same way.
Right. So probably we'll have to leave it there. Digital audience, to those who didn't get a chance, we'll try to get your comments and post it on our socials. I hate cutting people up towards the end. It's not what I want to do, but we just run out of time. It's such a quick, fast-paced show that we really need to get the pertinent points and get your views. But we thank you very much indeed. To our guests, Professor Ruth Teer Tomaselli, as well as Victor, thank you very much indeed. Value added indeed. Here's my thought. We are all dying. That's what defines the condition of living. So said Winston Churchill's character in The Crown. You remember that? Churchill was among the late Queen's 15 prime ministers. So on one hand, you have an outpouring of lamentations for the British Queen, but on the other, her death has triggered this distressing memories of the past. You heard it right here. As royal historian Kate Williams said, when the Queen came to the throne in 1952, there was still the British Empire, and much of that empire was conducted through exploitation and oppression. The empire largely ended on her watch. But the question now, 70 years later, what can King Charles III do to right some of the wrongs of the past? Will it be a case of never explain, never complain, or will there be a change of tune? As Churchill once said, to improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. We shall see, which is, of course, the three most loaded words in geopolitics. That's how we wrap things up. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.